Welcome to Financing Our Planet, a short video series on financing environmental agreements. Let's be clear, environmental agreements are not failing because the problems are ambiguous. They struggle because implementation costs money. Climate action, plastic pollution control, and environmental protection require infrastructure, systems, skills, and long-term investment. Without finance, commitments remain political statements rather than operational plans. In multilateral environmental agreements, finance is not a side issue. It is the mechanism that turns negotiated text into material change. What is environmental finance? Environmental and climate finance refers to financial resources mobilized under international agreements to support environmental action, particularly in developing countries. It is distinct from household or commercial finance. Its purpose is not profit, but implementation. In treaty contexts, environmental finance is embedded in the financial mechanisms, the institutional systems that govern how resources are raised, managed, and delivered. These mechanisms sit within a broader financial architecture, which includes governing bodies, eligibility rules, decision-making processes, and accountability structures. A fund, such as a trust fund or facility, is one tool within that system, not the system itself. These distinctions matter because negotiations often agree on creating mechanisms. However, they stall when it comes to the design of how they operate, which determines who benefits and who bears the cost. Where does the money come from? Environmental finance comes from three main sources. Public finance includes direct funding from one government to another, usually in the form of aid. This is the primary source of grants and is central to equity-based approaches. Private finance includes investments and commercial loans. It can mobilize large sums, but it expects repayment or returns. In sectors like waste management or pollution control, this often shifts financial risk to recipient governments or households. Multilateral finance flows through institutions, such as the Global Environment Facility and the Green Climate Fund. These were created to support implementation of multilateral environmental agreements. International financial institutions and multilateral development banks also play a role, particularly in large infrastructure projects. Much of their support is delivered as loans, which carry debt implications for recipient countries. Mobilization versus provision. Negotiations frequently focus on how much finance is mobilized. In other words, how much money is pledged or leveraged. Mobilization refers to the process of attracting and channeling capital from private sources into infrastructure development. Provision or delivery refers to how finance reaches countries and on what terms. This includes whether resources are grants or loans, how accessible they are, and who ultimately pays over time. A pledge does not equal delivery, and delivery does not guarantee equity. The gap is political, not technical. It shapes trust, credibility, and the feasibility of implementation. Why finance determines outcomes. Finance determines whether countries can build waste management systems, invest in alternatives to harmful materials, support workers through transitions, and develop local capacity. Delayed or inaccessible finance slows action. Debt-based finance can undermine it. A critical distinction here is between financing and funding. Financing describes the source of capital. Funding describes who ultimately pays the cost. Many innovative financing models succeed in mobilizing money, but fail to reduce the funding burden. Repayment obligations are transferred back to developing countries or local communities. For negotiations, this distinction is essential. Mobilizing capital without addressing who pays does not resolve the implementation challenge. Core tensions and challenges. Current mechanisms face persistent tensions. Needs are measured in trillions, while available resources remain far smaller. Access procedures are complex and resource-intensive. Equity questions remain unsolved, particularly when finance is delivered as debt rather than grant. For many countries in the Global South, the challenge is not willingness to act, but the cost of doing so. Finance is inseparable from treaties, negotiations, and justice. How financial mechanisms are designed determines whether agreements are credible or symbolic. In the next video, we will examine how treaties structure these mechanisms and why negotiations over finance are often where outcomes are decided.